Hello guys, welcome to this new tutorial about Mistika Ultima and Mistika Boutique. In this particular case, we're going to see an example of how can we make color grading, color management, and compositing in Mistika Ultima and Boutique using the same space, which is our timeline or the node graph. One of the greatest features in Mistika is that we don't need to move between interfaces, like an interface for grading, another interface for editing, or another interface for compositing, because everything can be done in the same space, which is a huge time saver and a much comfortable way to manage these kind of projects or these kind of shots. What we are trying to achieve is to create something like this. Basically, what we have is a footage and two very different looks. By the way, this footage can be downloaded from the Blender page. It's completely free, and it has been created by this guy that we will put here on the screen. So basically, again, we are going to try to achieve this result. We're going to do internal tools in Mistika. We're not going to use any external plugin, so everything can be done using the internal tools of the system. So let's start. Okay, the first thing is to open my EXR multilayer file, because this CGI file is basically an EXR with multiple layers of information. When we open it, we basically have like a black solid area. The reason why we have this black image, is because Mistika is not capable to understand which is the RGB layer. This is because if we go to our tool for extracting the information of this EXR multilayer file, which is the layer root tool, we open it here in the set, the RGB set, we see that we have many layers of information, but the RGB layer has a very strange name called render layer combined RGB and alpha. Mistika can understand the RGB layer if it's called RGBA or RGB, but in this particular case, because of the render engine that has been used for creating this media, the name is pretty weird, so that's the reason why we have to select it manually. Now there we go. Now we have our RGB layers loaded in our visual editor. As you can see, the color looks a bit strange. This is because it's in linear light and ACES color space. So we're going to start with the color management. We're going to work the full shot in ACES. So I'm going to go to my color management tool, which is the unicolor tool. And from here, we're going to manage the color space and the gamma curve of my shot. This tool has been explained in dedicated tutorials, so I'm not going to stay too much time in the parameters here. But as you can see, basically we have an input curve, an input gamut, an output gamut, and an output curve. So what we're going to do is to select the input curve of this shot, which is linear, and the input gamut, which is AP0 ACES linear. Now I'm going to transform this to the color space and the gamma curve that I want to use for my grading. So I'm going to select like my convert gamut, yes. And I'm going to select my output gamut for AP1, which is basically the ACES color space for the ACES CCT gamma curve that I'm going to use for grading. So I'm going to select AP1. And now in the output curve, I'm going to select ACES CCT. So this is basically the image that I'm going to use for making my grading. Of course, before that, we need to first put my color grade here. As you can see, it's just one effect in the full library of effects of Mistika, which is great because this means that this effect is fully integrated with the rest of the effects of Mistika. So I'm going to load my color grading node. And before starting with it, I'm going to select my ACES ODT to make the transformation to the monitor that I'm using for visualizing my compositing. So I'm going to select ACES ODT, and in here, I'm going to create my transformation by selecting the input curve ACES-CCT, which was the output curve of my unicolor, and my input gamut AP1 ACES-CCT, which was, again, my output gamut from the unicolor. As an output space, I'm going to select Rec 709 because I'm using a Rec 709 monitor for creating this tutorial. So in that way, we can see in a pretty clean way the result, the real color result of my shot. Obviously, if we are using a proper output monitor and we are making the grading for HDR or in P3 for a DCP, etc., we can just select other settings here. Alright, so now with my color management done, is the moment to start with the grading part. So I'm going to select my color grading here. And the first thing I'm going to do in this shot is to neutralize this kind of yellowish look of my image. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my yellow settings and just decrease them by steps to get something that is probably more neutral or more cold, which is the original look that I want for this shot before starting to make the artistic grading. Now with this adjustment, I've just neutralized the background, but still the foreground with the creature and the tree over here looks like a very saturated for me and doesn't have the color that I want. So I'm going to create another layer. And in here, I'm going just to select my creature and the tree. Now, how can I do that? I can just go to my vector layer, go to the multi-layer tool, and here in the depth layer, I can select render layer depth. This basically controls the whole depth of the shot. So I'm going to select by depth this area over here, the foreground area. So I'm going to enable my highlight and just move the depth parameter until I see something in my selection. There you go. And I'm going to increase the size. Good. And I'm going to remove these leaves over here. So I'm going just to keep the foreground part. I'm going to do that just by going to the shape mode and just create a shape around the object that I want to control. So now in my highlight I only have the creature and the tree. Good, now is the moment to decrease the saturation a little bit. Something like that. So now my clip looks like more neutral compared with what we have at the beginning. Cool, I'm going to use this starting point for making my artistic grading. First thing I'm going to do is just to create some contrast and increase the exposure of my shot to get something closer to what I want. So I'm going just to increase like this, maybe a little bit increase the overall saturation so I get more color in my shot. That looks nice. Now I'm going to focus on the creature here by creating another layer. And again, I'm going to use my multi-layer tool. But in this case, instead of using my overall depth of the shot, I have another layer called creature depth, which basically controls only the creature. As you can see, it's not taking the tree or the background. It's just the creature. So I'm going to select my creature by size. There we go. And now I'm going to combine this selection with the red color selection, because what I want to do is basically to increase the saturation of those red hues in the creature's head and maybe change them a little bit. So I'm going to my keyer mode and I'm just going to select the red hue. Something like this. Enable the proportional mode, and as you can see with the proportional we keep all those details and all the shadows from the original shot. If we disable the proportional, Mistika will take with the same intensity all the pixels in this selection over here. But in here I just keep in all those details and all those shadows. There we go. And I'm going to just maybe increase a little bit the blur to soften my selection. And now we can go just to primary and make it maybe more red or pink, something like that. We can just go to bands, change a little bit the hue and see how it behaves. Maybe a little bit of hue and maybe a little bit of saturation. There we go. Maybe it's too much, so something like this. Okay, now if we take a look to the change, it's an obvious change. Now our creature looks like more alive thanks to this color change. Maybe it's too much, the saturation, so I'm going to leave it in 100%. Now what I'm going to do is to take the interior parts of the creature, like it still looks a bit yellowish for me and has like a very obvious contrast with these red areas over here. So what I'm going to do is just to create another layer. In this particular case, I'm going to again use my multi-layer tool, use my creature depth. I'm going to select again my creature, increase the size to take everything, but in this particular case, in the keyer, I'm going to combine it with the yellow hue to take the interior parts of the creature, just soft a little bit, And the great thing, again, proportional. So see, you see we keep all those details and shadows over here, and just going to decrease a little bit the saturation, so we even keep more details from those areas. I'm going just to blur my selection to again make it look softer. And now we go to my primary, and in here what I'm going to do is just to move from yellow to something more pink, just to neutralize maybe this kind of yellowish look in there. So in that way we are making the creature look more consistent between colors. Okay, that looks nice. Maybe the first layer is too saturated, so I'm going to go to my vector for the first layer, I mean from the creature. So in here, maybe to decrease even the saturation to something like that. So in that way, this looks, I think this looks better. Alright, so now I have the overall look of my creature, my shot. Again, I'm going to create another layer that controls the whole shot by just increasing the gamma. I'm going to enable my scope to see that I'm in the legal values of my scope. So again, just contrast a little bit, increase the gamma. I don't mind this kind of highlights here, because again, my goal for this shot is to create some kind of sunny day or daylight shot. So having those highlights here in Rec 709 is perfectly fine, I think, for this shot. Again, finally what I want to do is to just create some kind of lens flares that come from this corner over here. So I'm going to create some kind of glow in this area by creating a new layer. Go to my window. I'm going to use an ellipse, a pretty simple ellipse that I bring to my corner, increase the softness, and in here with the primary tool I can just increase the gamma, the black point, to get something like that. There we go. So now basically we are creating some kind of glow of overexposed area here to bring my flare coming from this corner. Okay, so now is the moment to insert the flare effects. So I'm going to my effects library and load the flare effects. This is the default configuration of the flare. I'm going to disable some things and tweak other ones. The first one is supposed to put my origin, which again is in this corner over here, and the destination, which is maybe around here. Now here I've just created the glow with the color grade, so I don't need to use the glow, the native glow of my flare, so I'm going to disable it. There we go. And now I'm going to disable again the rays, maybe. Yes. And the flare, I'm going to disable this first flare that I have in here that is overexposing a lot my shot, by just disabling the first active. There we go. And now with the flare radius and the intensity, I can just control the flare of my shot. Finally, I'm going to remove this rainbow because I don't like it in this particular case. There we go. Now, what I'm going to do is to now fix this kind of ring that I have in here, and I'm going to use this this feature of my image to show some basic compositing capabilities. So what I'm going to do is to take my ring in here. I'm going just to increase the radius to put it there, increase the size, and maybe decrease the decay a little bit to create this kind of glowing ring. Now the problem with this ring is that, as you can see, is in front of my creature, is above everything, because the flare basically is above everything. Now I want to put this ring below my creature, behind it. So what I'm going to do is just to duplicate this in the way that one of the flares is going to have the ring, which is the one of the shots is going to have the ring, which is going to be my background, and one of them is going to have the ring disabled. So in that way, I'm going to use this shot to bring my creature on the tree, and I'm going to use this shot to keep the ring and the background. How can I combine both of them? Well, best way to do it is to create an alpha using my original shot. If we take a look to how this looks in the node graph, basically we have two flare effects, two clips or two stacks completely identical. We can make different duplicated and duplicate links and just put another flare in here. This is probably the best way to do it when the compositing is complex. But just to keep things probably cleaner, what I'm going to do is just to leave these two shots identical, so we can just understand that in one we have the ring and in the other one we don't have the ring. And we are going to combine both using the Com3D effect. So I'm going to duplicate my clip, my original clip. I don't need the layer root in this moment because I only want to use this clip for create an alpha. So what I'm going to do is to use my spatial key tool. And in the spatial key, I'm going to use again the depth layer. The spatial key basically works as the multi-layer tool that we have in the color grading mode. Basically, it has the same tools, the same features, but instead of using those tools for grading, this tool is used for creating alphas, so to create selections that will be placed in the alpha channel. So I'm going to just go to my alpha channel, go to my depth layer, render layer depth, and again, as I did in the color grade, I'm just going to select my creature and the tree. And again, as I did with my color grade, I'm going just to remove those leaves over here by just going to create shape, and just select this area there. And so in that way, I'm going to keep the alpha and just subtract that part because I don't have interest in keeping it in my selection. All right, so this is an alpha that I want to use with this image without the ring. So basically I want to combine this RGB with this alpha over here. So now how I can combine both? Well, in Mistika we have several ways to do it. I think probably one of the easiest one is use the external key. So we use an external key that takes both of them. Again, I'm going to open my node graph so we can see in a pretty clear way how this looks. So basically we have my background here with the ring, and we have my foreground here without the ring and with this alpha created using the spatial key. And to combine both, I just using an external key, the RGB is my input 1, the alpha is my input 2. So I'm going to here to my alpha channel, and instead of using the Luma 2, I'm going to use the alpha 2, the alpha of the second input. So in that way, now I have the alpha with my RGB. In fact, if we see the RGBA, we see that this is the selection that I've done in this using the alpha with the depth layer. Now I can combine both of them, the background of the foreground, using the Com3D node. So in the Com3D node, the first input is going to be my background, the second input is going to be my foreground. So in that way, now I'm combining both of them. So basically, as you can see now, the ring is just behind the creature, which was like looks different from what we have at the beginning. It's a small difference, but it's an example of how can we combine shots and make the compositing of shots using the Com3D and keeping the rest of the stack. Now if we go to here, we can understand probably in a much better way. We have our background, we have our foreground, and we create an alpha to integrate both of them. Alright, so this shot I think is perfectly done. So now the color grade is done, the compositing is done, the flare is done. Now is the moment to create a whole new different look using this background over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to bring my background here next to my original shot. And as we can see, the resolution of this background is different compared with the resolution of my project. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to use a framing node to match the resolution of my background with the one that I'm using in my project. So in the result size, I'm going to select project, and in fit, I'm going to select crop to fit. In that way, I'm just adapting my background to the resolution of my project. The great thing of this feature is that the result size is dynamic. So every time that I change the resolution of my project, this background and the whole compositing will be adapted to that new resolution. Alright, so we have this background and we have to use this background to combine it with this kind of shot. As you can see, the look is really different. So how can we manage and how can we do a whole different look using the same media? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is just to take my original stack, which was basically my original footage with the layer root, the unicolor, my grading node, and the ACS ODT for the display transformation. Now, what I'm going to do is just to remove some of the layers, some of the color grading layers that I've created for my sunny day shot, and instead of using those, I'm going just to remove some of them that were created especially for creating this kind of sunny day look. So for example, here this was created for the glow of the lens flare. I don't have a lens flare in this secondary look, so what I'm going to do is just to remove this layer. This was created for the overall exposure and contrast, so again I'm going to remove it as well. This was created for the creature. I'm going to keep that one, and this one as well because it's for the creature again. This was for the original original exposure and the original shot to balance the overall shot. I can leave it there, so for now I'm going to leave it there because at the end I can just mute it if I need it. Then here I have just the saturation control, and this was for the background, so I'm going to stay with this look for integrating with my background over here. Now, how can we make this creature looks much more darker and much more creepy? Well, for that I'm going to use again my spatial key tool. So I'm going to do a spatial key, and I'm going to again use the depth, but in this case I'm going to combine it with the directional light tool. So we go to my alpha channel, and I'm going to select my creature again. So render layer depth, and I'm going to select my creature here. There we go. I'm going to remove those leaves again from theirs by creating just a layer that takes them and subtract the selection. There we go. So we keep the original alpha but subtract the leaves, so we clean that part. And now I'm going to use the directional light. So I'm going to enable the render layer that has the normal information of my shot. Now this looks much creepy. I'm going to use exactly this kind of look to integrate it with this background. But as we can see, the light in the background comes from the top, and if we go to my creature here, the light comes exactly from the bottom. So I'm going to use the directional light to relight my shot by rotating the light to create something like that. So now at least it looks pretty similar of what we get. The light is coming from the top, and now the light is coming from the top. This is pretty cool. In fact, with the RGB A enabled, we see that now the creature looks much more darker and much more creepy. And we're going to use this kind of look to integrate it with the background here. Now, the thing is, we have this look because we're combining the alpha, which is this one, with the RGB, which is this one. And in the alpha, we have this kind of black solid that is creating the shadows here when we enable the RGBA, but those shadows are not real. Those shadows are not in my shot. It's just part of the alpha. So I'm going to make them real by using a solid node in here and combine both with a Com3D. So before combine this with the background, let's take a look of what we are doing here. With the Com3D, basically I'm selecting a proper background, which is the solid, the black solid here, and a proper foreground, which is my selection here. So now we are getting basically the same result that we get in the RGBA in here, but with a proper color for shadow. So we have we don't have alpha in this shot, but we have this overall look for my creature. Now if we take a look to my background, this background doesn't have any kind of pure black color in the shot. So the shadows here looks like much more bluish. So instead of using a pure black solid, I'm going to use a more yellowish color. So I'm going to put all of them in the same stack, and with the framing selected, I'm going to just go to my solid node, go to pick color, and just pick a color that is close to the shadows of my shot. So for example, this one. So in this particular case, so in that way now my creature has this kind of shadows that are much more close to the color of the shadows of my shot. Now I need to combine this creature here with this background here, but this creature now doesn't have an alpha. So how can I combine it? Well, just exactly what we did with this shot, by using my clip, my original clip, and using a spatial keynote. And here, basically I'm going to go to create my alpha, to select again my creature with the tree. So we enable the depth layer, we select my creature here, to use a little bit of softness. So some areas here will look like semi-transparent, which is, I think, is good in this particular case. And I'm going to remove those leaves over there again by just creating a shape and just subtract them. Okay, so I'm going to combine again this alpha with this RGB. So how can I do that? Well, exactly like we did in the previous shot. I take both of them and external key. So again, if we take a look in the node graph of how this is looking, I'm going to reset layout to see it in a more clear way. Basically, we have our background and we have our foreground, which has an RGB layer, which is the creature with the color of the shadows of my background, and then we have my alpha, and I want to combine both. So I'm using again my external key to say that my alpha is the alpha of the input 2. So now if we go to the RGBA, we see that now we have this shot. Now if we combine this foreground with this background by using a Com3D, we get this result. Now this looks pretty cool, but there is another thing that we should do, which is the fact that the background looks like very blurred and the foreground looks like very focused. And that's the reason why it's not very consistent between them. So the way to fix that is to create some kind of blur based on depth. So to do that, first thing I'm going to do is again to bring my original clip here by duplicating the clip. I'm going to group this to keep things cleaner, because now I have my compositing done. What I want to do is just to create some kind of blur based on depth. So I'm going to create an alpha just for that. So I'm going to use my spatial keynote, and in here I'm going to my alpha channel just to see what I'm selecting, and then again enable my depth layer. This particular case, what I'm going to do is just to focus on the creature head, because I think it's the most interesting part of the shot. And with this basic selection, I'm just going to use the softness to select something more. Now, I don't want to blur the face, I want to blur the background and everything else. So what I'm going to do is just to select my inverse selection, the inverse tool, and now I will keep the face focused and the rest will have some blurred. Those gray areas will have a mix between focused and blurred. So now we are creating a blurred area based on depth. Now if we go to my RGB channel, and I'm going to combine both of them, again using an external key. As you can see, we're using always the same tools to create different things, but using always the same tools. So now we have 2D alpha, and again alpha input 2. So now we have this alpha with this foreground. And now we can use a blur effect, use the circle mode, which is the closest one to the blur generated by a camera, by a real camera. And instead of applying this in RGB, I'm going to select RGB in alpha, so in that way it will take the alpha as a map for creating the blur. Now increase the radius, and there we go. Now those areas are blurred, but the face of the creature is perfectly focused. So now we have the second look for this same shot. Now if we just group them, we can compare both of them using a simple wipe. And as you can see, basically we have two very different looks for the same shot and the same footage. The great thing of this workflow is that at the end, what you have is just a normal group that can be placed anywhere in your timeline, anywhere in your editing. If you want to change something, you can just go here open the group, and just make any changes in a non-destructive way. We don't use any bridges between compositing and color grading. Everything again is integrated. I'm using the color grading node for compositing. Sometimes I used compositing tools for grading. In this particular case, I'm just combining all the tools, or many of the tools that I have in here, to create the desired look.